ransomed, not with perishable things such as silver or gold, but with the precious blood of Christ. We are all searching for a purpose and meaning in life. Or we don't believe in all of that and wrap our existence in directionless nihilism. I had a clear purpose and meaning at one point in my life. When I was a Catholic, my position and goal were clearly defined. God sees me and loves me, and that's all that matters. Normally, when we love something, it's because we see something in the thing or the person that almost evokes our love. God, as I was taught, causes the other thing or person to be lovable when he loves that thing. I felt loved and worthy because of that fact. God created me in his image, and my goal in life was simply to fully actualize that image. With his help, of course, with grace. If I did a good action, I could say that I was moving towards that end. It was because I conformed to the grace of God. If I did a bad action, it was because I acted on my own and towards an object outside of God. Who would choose porn over God? But we are masters of deceiving ourselves. Some people will rationalize taking drugs because they think that the momentary high is worth all the other detrimental and circumstantial side effects that ruin their life. They think it's a good for them. So in this light, with this understanding, I was told to submit myself to the wise ones, the priests and spiritual directors. And to be honest, I do think that it is unwise to just follow our own judgments on everything. We should listen to the advice of people who may have more experience than us. Why do we have to keep going and making the same mistakes that people in previous generations have made over and over and over again when we can just learn from them? But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about blindly following people just because of who they represent. Why am I doing this? Is this some white supremacist sign? And what result did this have in me? I didn't trust myself. Instead of building confidence as I matured as a person, I became more and more dependent on others to tell me if I was doing the right thing, especially in the most important decisions in my life. I mean, I wasn't like the little old ladies asking their priest if it was okay to clean their kitchen on Sundays, but I was close. In a general sense, I was taught as a Catholic that I must see myself as I truly am and not live in an illusion. I have to see the good and the bad. That's how I'm supposed to go to God to ask for help. And we all know how hard it is to help people who think that they are the bee's knees, that they don't really need help. Actually, just as a side note, the bee's knees came from the 18th century and it meant the opposite. It meant something small and insignificant. In the 1920s, that's where we have the current meaning, which is an outstanding person or thing. I found that interesting. Anyway, in that state of humility, when we go to God as a person full of defects, God can truly help us. God is like that parent who people would say loves the ugly child. You know, when we say a face that only a mother would love, except we are the ugly-faced babies. Although religious texts promote a good and healthy balance of perspective, the everyday and practical experience is not that straightforward. God uses even the evil within us to show his goodness. Just get back up and try again. And come closer to God. That sin was an opportunity to see our weakness and to grow in humiliation. Sounds great. But in the mind, sin equals hell, equals separation from God, who is the very source of the esteem and value that we have as human beings. It leaves one running to and from confession, placing emphasis on the value we have when we're on good terms with God, and how disgusting we are when we're not. But that's not how Catholics should think. We should be happy and have faith in our moments of weakness and see how God is using them to bring us closer to Him. Sounds great. Unfortunately, that's not normally what happens. At least that's what I believe. You can't just turn a switch on and off and control normal human reactions. Making a bad choice that deserves eternal punishment and is completely your fault causes us to feel bad. We don't want to disappoint our parents or the priest or ultimately God. We can't help it. But in those moments, we're supposed to just negate those feelings or overpower them with the virtuous idea that we are going to be forgiven and have a certain sense of peace and joy. But not only that, we all fail a lot. We fall short a lot, especially when the standards are completely above our capabilities. But that's part of being human. Okay? It shows we need God. Okay? But after some time in this perspective, what human would not think, maybe I'm not good enough for all of this. Maybe there's something wrong with me. But then you must trust God more, pray more, accept the humiliation and weakness more, and God will supply the rest. Okay, then time goes on. Sin after sin after sin, trying to maintain the proper perspective, sin and more sin. Does this not affect the person? If we are human, is there not a system that really takes into consideration our own limitations? Is there no room to feel bad and helpless? Christ's martyrs feared neither death nor pain. He triumphed in them who lived in them, and they who lived not for themselves but for Him found in death itself the way to life. There are innumerous examples of these heroic figures in Catholicism. Ordinary people just like you and me, who did these amazing feats of faith, some to the point of giving their lives to attest their faith in God. I admired them so much. We all had our favorites. These once sinners who at some point in their life had a moment of conversion and fully changed their life to live according to the ideal. There was no doubt that for us Catholics, the saints were the ideal. They acted heroically, not because they were depending on their own power, but because they allowed God to work through them. Not only was this doctrine that we were given something abstract and beautiful, as it was, but we could see it in practice. Look, here are examples. No need to say that if we were to compare ourselves with anyone, it was to these saints. They seemed so close, yet so far away. In their sinful pasts, I could relate to them. That was the easy part. When they lived lives as a pathetic human, I could look at them and say, yep, relatable. And even in their conversion, in the moment when they decided to accept the grace of God and convert completely, change their lives completely, I could see my own will and intention and the complete generosity that I felt. But in the moment that actually mattered in their life, they seemed light years away. Why did God give them the grace to be faithful and not me? Francis, you can't say that. That's presumption. Did God prefer them over me Francis, that is blasphemous. We all know how God loves. Because in the comparison, I was trying to figure out what the problem was. And my conclusion was always me. I must have needed more formation or preparation. I must have needed to be crushed and humiliated more by whatever means in order to decrease my own will so that God could truly help me. I didn't want to sin anymore, not because I was afraid of hell, but because I wanted to truly be what I was called to be, what I thought I was called to be, a child of God. I wanted to be a saint.
As the Lord thought good, so it came to pass. Let us adopt those marvelous words. At the hands of the righteous judge, those who show the like good deeds shall receive a like reward. He whom we love is not hidden in the ground, he is received into heaven. Let us wait a little while, and we shall be once more with him. The time of our separation is not long, for in this life we are all like travelers on a journey, hastening on to the same shelter. While one has reached his rest, another arrives, another hurries on, but one and the same end awaits them all.
I don't have any idea what that accent was. When we come face to face with some truth, the proper Catholic, rational, logical response is to submit. No questions asked. This is part of humility. I still agree, actually. Like the effects of gravity prevent me from jumping off of the roof. If you felt bad about those truths, or if you didn't understand the truths, or if there was some sort of conflict with the truths, that didn't matter. It wasn't a personal matter. It was a matter of cold, logical facts. Fact. Humans are conceived with a fallen human nature, guilty of the curse imposed upon Adam and Eve, unable to reach heaven without baptism. Fact. Baptism isn't everything. You also have to die without the stain of mortal sin upon your soul, which means separation from God. Fact. God created us without us. He saved us without us. And he is the reason that we are able to persevere until the end. Although there is some part of that we play into, but it's something very mysterious and elusive to a rational mind. And that's why Catholics aptly call it a mystery. Fact. If we die in that state of sin, it is our fault for rejecting the help that God provides to anyone. We send ourselves to hell. So during all that time, what was really going through my head? I didn't care about how I felt about anything. If I was following the dictates of the doctrine and the advice from my parents or the priests, that was enough for me, even if I was being tortured inside. If I was happy or sad, excited or depressed, the focus was on the objective truths around me. Was I in the state of grace? Yes. Then all was objectively good. But of course, it could be better. If I wasn't in the state of grace, then I was just death away from eternal damnation. Without realizing it, I began to microanalyze all of my actions. I wanted Big Daddy to look down on me and deem me worthy of helping me accept his help, because I realized that I couldn't do any good without his help. But it also depended on my own actions, which also depended on his grace, which depended on me accepting the grace, which I couldn't do without his grace. A mystery. Of course, in my day-to-day life, I was not thinking like this. I tried to act with that elusive word that is actually easier to practice than to define: love. I had good parents who raised me, and it was more evident to me what was expected of me by them. But by love, I didn't just do the bare minimum. I did more, and I did it with a better fervor and intention. I tried to apply that with God too, thinking that love was love in every circumstance. But I ended up putting myself into a very toxic relationship. Scorecards were displayed. On one side we had God, goodness itself, creator of human nature, redeemer of bad humans, always gives necessary help. And then on the other side, me, nothing good alone, creature completely dependent, part of fallen humanity, and beneficiary of God's selfless sacrifice to save me, and sinner when I don't accept that help. And I was a sinner, hardcore. When I sinned, it was 100%. No way of getting around it, my fault. It was because you did not have enough faith, answered Jesus. I assure you that if you have faith as big as a mustard seed, you can say to this hill, go from here to there, and it will go. You can do anything. When your whole system turns around this perspective, you only have two options. You can either give up, which is, from my perspective at that time, like spitting in the face of God, some sort of proud stupidity, or to just keep going on, hoping that God, or at least his representatives, the priests and religious, know what they're doing. At that time in my life, I didn't trust myself at all. I always second-guessed myself. I depended on God, hoping that this was all in some way part of his plan, and that he would one day allow me to get into heaven. But also I was depending on the priests, who were supposed to be more wise and experienced in the spiritual life, that they were holier than me, and they could tell me what I needed to do. And my obedience was blind where it counted. When I was in the seminary, there were a few times that I went into the office of my spiritual director, a priest, and told him that I didn't judge myself to have the strength of will to become a priest, that it didn't seem that I would be a good candidate to live a life of celibacy, which means no sex, you noobs. And also that I didn't show signs of having an ideal spiritual state in order to be a guide and leader for other people. He told me that we should just wait and see what God would show us was the best option. And I waited, and I saw that things were not changing, but I was patient. I trusted and I hoped. I believed in the power of God, and I believed the words of the priest, someone more experienced than me. And I tried to give myself generously to this mysterious process that I wasn't able to see in practice. At the same time, I wasn't expecting a miracle. It wasn't that I was expecting myself go from one extreme to another overnight or even within a few years. I was just looking for some signs, something to rest upon as proof that this was the correct way of life for me. I didn't see it. But my spiritual director told me that he was satisfied enough. And I thought, he must be seeing something that I'm not seeing. I have to trust him and trust his judgment. He said that I should continue on to become a priest, and that's what I did. So let's imagine some random hypothetical situation that going on with the process and becoming a priest was not the right decision for someone. I know, it's so random. This doesn't actually happen. Well, this is where things get interesting because the process in the seminary, they explicitly say that the candidate has to decide on his own to continue on. The priests, the spiritual directors, only advise him. Now let's just think about this. A normal Catholic layman's perception of what God's will is versus the perception of a priest who is supposedly closer to God and more holy, which one seems more certain? As a Catholic layman, do I conform myself to my own perception of what God's will is, or the one that's given to me by the priest? Which one seems more safe? But then again, it's my fault if something goes wrong. It's not the priest's fault. It's a funny loophole of culpability. Assholes. I made videos before about the specifics of what happened next, but needless to say, the hypothetical if something goes wrong became a reality. Something went seriously wrong, and it was my fault. I was the one who made the decision to become a priest. Having been so dependent on other people's guidance and opinions of me, which includes God, I came face to face with myself when the system, when the structure around me that had been such a security for me began to crumble around and I was left naked and alone. I realized that I couldn't act outside of that structure. I couldn't just follow their advice, while at the same time I saw myself slipping away into depression and a place of complete darkness. I don't want to exaggerate, but I saw myself heading in the direction of self-harm and killing myself. I was both anorexic and bulimic at times. I was losing sleep. I was paralyzed with anxiety. I was experiencing self-hatred. All of the victim cards that I could use now to garner the sympathy of others, to make myself feel good. But that's not what I want. I don't care what other people think. I just wanted to survive and live the rest of my life. But this crisis did not last forever. Luckily, I was able to make a decision. I was able to pick myself up out of the grave that I was burying myself in and do something that didn't depend on other people's guidance, on what they thought, what God thought, what my parents thought, but what I thought was the best option for me. I have learned, and I am still learning, that I'm not perfect. I still make mistakes just like anyone else, and I feel guilty when I don't live up to my own principles. No longer do I feel guilty when I don't live up to the expectations of others, of the priests, of God, but when I recognize that I can do better, and it's within my power to do that. I consider life to be an uphill journey where we take little steps to finally reach our full potential. At least that's the direction we should be heading. But, and I really mean but not booty butt, but just the conjunction but, that I can look at myself now, and this is something that I couldn't do before, and I can say that I'm happy with the person that I am now. Go figure. It is possible. It's not complacent contentment. Like, oh, you got it. You reached the goal. You are perfect just the way you are. No. It's overall satisfaction with where I am and the direction that I'm going. And that is a huge step for me or anyone who has been through the same type of experience. And after exposing myself to you, I'm gonna go get some clothes on. Bye.